Caitlin Clark is way more important to the WNBA than Tiger Woods was to men's golf, even though he was huge. And to then see this negativity, like why? And what should have been done? I looked seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it at Iowa. You see these TV ratings.
It's filling in for me, so I've been looking forward to this all week. Christine Brennan is one of the best sports writers in the country, has been for a long time.
Christine Brennan just exposed the WNBA in a major way. Guys, for this one here, we got to go all the way up to Indy. Let's get
it. The WNBA just got exposed in the worst way possible. A USA Today reporter dropped bombshells revealing how the league's own commissioner and officials have been treating Caitlin Clark with pure jealousy, ignorance, and total disrespect for her greatness. And now the league's reputation is on fire. So what do you think? Is this straight up hate or just next level incompetence?
Came out, what she had to say in this book was going to shake the ground of the WNBA. She's been around for a very long time, and she knows the inner and outer workings of this league. Christine Brennan let it be known in multiple interviews that the WNBA was not ready for a superstar like Caitlin.
So here's what happened. Christine Brennan, a veteran USA Today reporter who's been covering women's basketball longer than most players have been alive, just dropped a book that hit the WNBA like a nuclear bomb. And believe me, the shockwaves are still shaking the entire league.
The thing I don't get, Christine, is that in the case of Tiger and in the case of Jordan, the other players and the league around them, in Tiger's case the PGA Tour, realized that a rising tide raises all boats and were incredibly supportive of Tiger and Jordan. With Caitlin, it seems like, for whatever reason, she's polarizing. Like she's been hit with more flagrant fouls than any player ever this year. They tried to come at you when you were writing a story and said, don't ask questions about why people don't like Caitlin Clark. But I'm going to ask you, Christine, why is she polarizing in your opinion? Why do people not embrace the phenomenon that is Caitlin Clark?
It's one of the big points in the book. I deal with all of this and my research and reporting, because I was perplexed as well. I mean, this is the greatest moment ever for the WNBA. Yep. We wish it happened sooner. Of course we wish it happened sooner. There were amazing players who, as you know, both you guys know, were toiling in obscurity. The male-dominated mainstream sports media ignoring them.
Brennan didn't just write some feel-good story about women's empowerment. She went full investigative mode and exposed how unprepared, clueless, and downright hostile the WNBA has been toward their own golden goose, Caitlin Clark, the very woman who dragged this league out of obscurity and into the spotlight. And shockingly, they hated every second of it.
Like everybody else. And I think, guys, that actually helped me understand as a journalist the fascination, because I've covered a lot over my career and been very fortunate to be at Wimbledon's and Super Bowls and Tiger Woods and you name it, I've covered it. And I'm so lucky to have done that. And I found myself fascinated, who is this? And I'm getting text messages from guys who would never have watched a second of women's basketball. Good guys, they want their daughters to play sports. I mean, good people, but just And they're texting, are you there? I'm watching. Are you seeing this performance? And that told me something that I actually was very helpful to be at home watching it versus being on press row talking to a bunch of other journalists, that okay, there's something going on in the country here. And it's everyone's fascinated and people are standing in line for hours in the cold around the Big Ten, this barnstorming tour. And it's all about a basketball player who happens.
The book reveals that the day after Caitlin Clark declared for the 2024 WNBA draft, Christine Brennan called a top league official, and that's when things got wild. This official, living in some alternate universe, told her that Clark's arrival was the biggest thing since Maya Moore, which sounds impressive until you realize most people outside of hardcore basketball fans couldn't even recognize Maya Moore in a crowd. But Brennan, with decades of experience, knew what the WNBA clearly didn't. Clark wasn't just another talented player, she was a revolution in motion, a cultural shift, a once-in-a-generation superstar who would pull millions into the sport. Yet despite this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity staring them in the face, the league did nothing, literally nothing, as they sat frozen, clueless, and completely unprepared while the biggest moment in women's basketball history came crashing toward them like a tidal wave. And when you really think about it, the level of incompetence is beyond staggering.
Authorized, which is not ominous at all. You want it to be unauthorized because I can tell the truth, unvarnished. Caitlin's quoted throughout the book. She was great answering any question I asked her, but dealing with these important issues. So you've got a 74% black league. We understand this. I mean, I'm white. You know, Ramona, I think you guys are white.
Yeah.
We have no idea what it's like to be black in America. And I say that. Let's be brutally honest here. Here comes a white woman from Iowa, and she's going to be the biggest superstar. Now, absolutely, the spotlight's shining on her. Finally, it's shining on all these other players who deserved it for years but never got it. And that's a wonderful turn of events. But instead of focusing on the positives, sadly, the WNBA players, so many of them.
Now here's where it gets wild. Brennan's book doesn't just reveal how unprepared the WNBA was, it shows they had absolutely no clue what kind of phenomenon Caitlin Clark really was. League officials genuinely didn't believe something like this could happen to them. They were so used to being the forgotten stepchild of pro sports that they couldn't even imagine mainstream success. And that's just sad. Your own league doesn't believe in its own product. They were so convinced of their irrelevance that when greatness literally walked through the door and declared for their draft, they shrugged like it was just another Tuesday, like a restaurant owner being shocked that people actually want to eat the food. But it gets worse. Brennan reveals that independent content creators and some reporters saw the Caitlin Clark wave coming from miles away, covering her during her Iowa days and recognizing that this wasn't just hype, it was history in the making. They knew her massive fanbase wasn't going to vanish the second she turned pro, yet somehow the WNBA brass missed it all, and the numbers prove it. Back in 2023, the Indiana Fever averaged just 4,000 fans per game, which is less than most high school games in Texas, but when Caitlin Clark showed up for her first preseason game, fans were lining up 2 hours before doors even opened, 2 hours early for a preseason WNBA game. Security was stunned, the league was caught off guard, and it became crystal clear that Caitlin didn't just arrive, she changed everything.
And I've argued that the NBA could use a little bit more of hero and villain to popularize the sport again. The WNBA does not need that, because for a lot of America, Caitlin Clark is the hero. And anyone that comes to Caitlin Clark's defense is a hero. And everyone that flagrantly fouls her, speaks poorly of her, acts like she's not great is the villain, and then vice versa on that. How big of a part of the story is that when you look at the conflict surrounding Caitlin Clark? We got grown men on talking head shows wanting to fight each other over basketball and talking about it, right? We've got all these hot takes about all this going on, Christine. How big of a part of the story is that for you, and is that for this book?
For sure in the book. And, you know, I think what we've seen is surprising to me. Having covered women's sports as well as men's, you know, for the length of my career, you would have thought that the arrival of this superstar in the WNBA...
And how did the WNBA respond to this once-in-a-lifetime surge of attention? Did they embrace it, build a massive campaign around their new superstar, roll out the red carpet, or seize the momentum to grow the game? Of course not. They acted irritated, like the spotlight was an inconvenience rather than a blessing, as if they were more comfortable living in quiet mediocrity than dealing with real success. Brennan's book makes it painfully clear, the real issue was jealousy, from league officials to veteran players and even longtime media insiders who couldn't handle the fact that a second-year player was drawing more buzz, bigger crowds, and higher TV ratings than they ever did, and instead of celebrating that women's basketball was finally breaking through to the mainstream, they chose bitterness. While the arenas were selling out, TV viewership was exploding, and millions of new fans were finally tuning in, the league's own people were too busy resenting the one person who made it all possible.
And here comes Caitlin Clark, and let's say it, and I say it in the book, I'd go into this in depth, a white woman from Iowa in a 74% black league. That's an issue. The book is the first real journalistic look at this entire season and at Caitlin Clark and what she's done and all these issues that are out there. No holds barred. I shy away from nothing. And I look at the way players like Diana Taurasi, Brianna Stewart, Cheryl Swoops with her flurry of falsehoods, Cheryl Reeve, the Olympic coach, Gina Auriemma, really tried to minimize her and were very critical of her. That stunned me. You should be saying, this is great. You don't have to cheer for her. You guard her. You play tough. She's not a victim. She loves to throw it at people. She's feisty and tough out there. And that makes her, I think, even more appealing to so many people. But for this group of people to want to say such negative things and be so wrong about her, okay, fine. It's a free country. You can do what you want. But what she's doing by going into the WNBA.
But instead of celebrating the biggest moment in league history, instead of realizing that a rising tide lifts all boats, the WNBA responded with hostility. Players took cheap shots on the court, refs made shady calls, and the media pushed narratives claiming Clark was getting too much attention, like people complaining about winning the lottery just because they didn't pick the numbers. The craziest part is how predictable this all was. Anyone with half a brain could see that Clark's massive college fanbase was going to follow her to the pros, because she wasn't some one-hit March Madness wonder. She was a proven draw, year after year, breaking viewership records, selling out arenas, and bringing real, organic hype to women's basketball. But the league? They ignored the giant neon signs flashing right in front of them and did absolutely nothing. Instead of building around her, they stayed stuck in their outdated ways, convinced that things would never change, and Brennan's book makes it clear, this wasn't just bad strategy, it was professional negligence on a massive scale. She exposes the toxic culture inside the league, where some people actually believe that mainstream success somehow makes the sport less authentic, like if too many people start watching, it's suddenly not real anymore, which is the most backwards mindset you can have in professional sports, and the result? Instead of protecting their biggest star, instead of elevating the player who brought in millions of new fans and revenue, the league let resentment take over. Players were openly hostile, coaches threw shade in press conferences, and the media spun stories about Clark getting special treatment, as if drawing record crowds, spiking TV ratings, and putting the WNBA on the map wasn't enough to deserve support. If that's not self-sabotage, what is?
Caitlin Clark is way more important to the WNBA than Tiger Woods was to men's golf, even though he was huge to men's golf. And to then see this negativity, you'll probably, the next question would be, or your viewers and listeners are probably say, okay, so like why? And what should have been done? And I looked seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it at Iowa. You see these TV ratings. 4 million more, as I said, watching the women than the men. I think it's worth repeating a few times because it is such a stunning statistic, guys.
Once-in-a-generation game changer, all because they were more comfortable clinging to their small, insular world than facing real growth. And now, even in Clark's second season, the same problems remain. TV ratings spike when she plays, merchandise flies off the shelves, arenas stay packed. Yet there's a toxic undercurrent in the league like some people just want all of this to go away. Brennan exposes what might be the worst case of organizational dysfunction in modern sports, a league that was on life support, handed salvation in the form of a global superstar, and treated her like an inconvenience. And this isn't just about the WNBA, it's a masterclass in how institutions so rooted in tradition can sabotage themselves when faced with change, choosing resentment and fear over opportunity and growth. Instead of riding Clark's wave, the league treated her like a threat, and the results speak for themselves: on-court targeting, bitter media narratives, and leadership that either looked away or actively enabled it. Brennan pulls the curtain back on internal league politics, media hypocrisy, and even Nike's stunning failure to properly market their biggest new asset in years. Her rookie season should have been a celebration, a turning point, a marketing blitz, but instead it became a public display of resistance, jealousy, and missed chances, all while content creators and new media saw Clark's cultural power from day one and embraced it in ways the league never did. The generational divide became clearer, with older officials resisting her rise while younger voices welcomed the spotlight she brought to women's basketball. And perhaps the most damning revelation in the book is how some of the same people who trashed her success during her first season are now conveniently claiming credit for the league's growth. They spent months downplaying her impact, then flipped the script once the numbers spoke for themselves, revealing a level of hypocrisy that's almost laughable. Brennan's expose doesn't just highlight the league's missteps, it exposes the deep cultural resistance to success when it comes from outside the establishment, and it proves that the WNBA didn't just miss an opportunity, they actively pushed it away, choosing ego over evolution, silence over leadership, and bitterness over breakthrough.